The big alien ship moved through space like a monster made of crystal and metal. Admiral Kethavara stood on the bridge and looked at the stars ahead of him. His race called themselves the Zephyrians, and they had been taking over planets for thousands of years. They were very good at it. Their ships had weapons that could turn other ships into melted metal in seconds. They had never lost a war. Kethavara looked at the screen that showed their next target. It was a small blue and green planet that went around a yellow star. The people on this planet called it Earth. His officers had told him that the humans who lived there were not very advanced. They had only been flying in space for about 200 years. To Kethavara, this seemed like no time at all. His people had been flying between stars for 12,000 years. "Tell me about these humans," Kethavara said to his tactical officer. The officer looked at his datapad and began to read. "They are bipeds like us, but they have soft skin instead of our crystal shell. They breathe oxygen and drink water. Their technology is very basic. They have some ships, but nothing that could fight our fleet. Intelligence says they have been fighting wars among themselves for most of their history." Kethavara made a clicking sound with his mouth parts that meant he was laughing. "They fight each other instead of working together. How typical of primitive species. Send one battle group to take their planet. We do not need our full fleet for such weak enemies." On the planet Earth, things were very different from what the aliens expected. In a big room under the surface of the moon, a man named Jake Morrison was watching screens that showed space around Earth. He was the director of the United Earth Defense Coalition. This group had been formed 50 years ago when humans first detected alien signals from deep space. Jake had been preparing for this day his whole adult life. "Sir, we have contacts coming out of hyperspace," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, who was sitting at a control station. 60 alien ships are heading our way. They will reach Earth in 18 hours. Jake nodded, and his face stayed calm, even though, inside, he felt worried. He had known this day would come, but it was still scary to see it actually happening. He pressed a button on his desk and spoke into his microphone. "All stations, this is Morrison. Operation Underdog is now active. Repeat, Operation Underdog is active. Far out in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a man named Steve Bennett got the message on his ship called the Freedom. Steve was officially a mining ship captain, but he and his crew had been training for war in secret. His ship looked like it was just for mining rocks, but it had been changed to carry weapons and soldiers. "You all heard the director?" Steve said to his crew over the ship's communication system. "Time to show these aliens what happens when someone tries to hurt our home." The crew of the Freedom had been waiting for this moment. They were miners and engineers, but they were also Earth's secret weapon. All around the solar system there were ships like theirs, ships that looked peaceful but were ready for war. Back on the alien flagship, Admiral Kethavara was getting ready for an easy victory. His 60 ships were some of the best in the Zephyrian fleet. Each one could destroy a human city with one shot. He expected the humans to surrender as soon as they saw his ships. "Admiral, we are getting a signal from the planet," his communication officer said. The main screen showed a human man in a military uniform. This was Jake Morrison speaking from the moon base. "I am Jake Morrison speaking for all humans on Earth. You have come to our home with weapons and bad intentions. Turn around and go away now, and we will not hurt you." Kethavara and his officers started laughing. The sound filled the bridge like breaking glass. "Foolish human," Kethavara said. "You have maybe 200 ships. We have destroyed fleets much bigger than yours. Give up now and we will kill you quickly." Jake Morrison's face did not change. He looked calm and confident. "I think you do not understand. Those ships you can see are not all we have. They are just the ones we wanted you to see." Suddenly, the alien sensors started showing new contacts everywhere. Ships came out from behind the moon where they had been hiding. More ships came from the asteroid belt. Ships that had been floating in space like dead metal suddenly turned on their engines. What the aliens had thought was space junk turned out to be camouflaged warships. "This cannot be right," whispered the tactical officer as he stared at his screens. "There are over 3,000 human ships out there." The Zephyrians had never seen anything like this before. Usually when they arrived at a planet, the people there would either fight with a few ships or surrender right away. No one had ever hidden a huge fleet and then surprised them like this. On one of the hidden ships, Captain Lisa Parker was getting ready for battle. Her ship was a destroyer that had been hiding behind an asteroid for 6 months. All ships this. Is Parker. Time to execute Protocol 7. Hit them hard and fast and do not give them time to think. The human fleet began to move, and the aliens could not believe what they were seeing. Instead of flying in straight lines like most space fleets, the human ships moved like a school of fish or a flock of birds. They twisted and turned and seemed to flow around each other without ever crashing. Commander Ryan Davis was flying a small fighter ship through the battle. His job was to get close to the big alien ships and attack their weak spots. Remember what we learned in training, everyone. These ships are tough, but they are not impossible to kill. Aim for their power cores and engines. The space around Earth became full of laser beams and explosions. The alien ships were powerful, but they had expected to fight a small fleet that would attack them head-on. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by thousands of ships that attacked from every direction, and then disappeared before the aliens could shoot back. The battle went on for 6 hours. When it was finally over, half of the alien ships were destroyed or badly damaged. The rest ran away as fast as they could. Admiral Kethavara could not believe what had happened. His mighty fleet had been beaten by a bunch of primitive humans. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Jake Morrison allowed himself to smile for the first time in hours. They had won the first battle, but he knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they would bring more ships. Good work, everyone, he said to his staff. But this was just round 1. Now we get ready for round 2. The news of the defeat spread through the Zephyrian Empire like fire through dry grass. Admiral Kethavara stood before the high command on their home planet, trying to explain how a primitive species had destroyed half his fleet. The crystalline beings who ruled the Empire listened with growing anger. You lost 30 ships to humans, said High Admiral Zixithara, her voice cold as space ice. Humans who have been in space for less time than we spend training a single pilot. Kethavara tried to defend himself. They had more ships than our intelligence reported. They used tactics we have never seen before. They fought like animals, not like civilized beings. Excuses, Zixithara said. The Empire does not accept excuses. We will send a real fleet this time. War Admiral Thexnall will take 800 ships and end this embarrassment. Thexnall was known throughout the Empire as the conqueror of worlds. He had never lost a battle and had destroyed entire civilizations. When he heard about the human victory, he laughed and began planning his attack. These humans got lucky, he told his captains as they gathered on his flagship. They surprised a small scouting force. When I arrive with 800 warships, there will be no surprises and no tricks, just pure overwhelming force. On Earth, the celebration of their first victory was brief. Long-range sensors detected the massive alien fleet forming up at the edge of their solar system. Jake Morrison called an emergency meeting with all of Earth's military leaders. They are bringing everything they have, he told the group of worried faces around the table. 800 capital ships, plus support vessels and fighters. We bloodied their nose and now they want revenge. General Kate Sullivan, who commanded Earth's ground forces, looked at the numbers on her datapad. Our fleet cannot match those numbers, Jake. Even with our unconventional tactics, we are looking at 4-to-1 odds or worse. Jake smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Then it is a good thing we are not planning to fight fair. Colonel Brooks, how are our special projects coming along? Colonel Alex Brooks activated a holographic display that showed various strange-looking ships. Project Sleipnir is ready for deployment. The stealth frigates can get close to enemy ships without being detected. Project Mjolnir has given us kinetic bombardment platforms that can crack open their heavy cruisers. And Project Fenrir, well, let us just say, they will not see that one coming. When the huge Zephyrian fleet arrived, they found Earth's defenders, waiting for them in what looked like a normal battle formation. War Admiral Thexnall looked at the human fleet through his tactical display and felt confident. Look at them, he said to his officers. They have abandoned their previous tricks, and now face us ship to ship like proper warriors. They have learned that they cannot defeat superior numbers with clever tactics. The alien fleet advanced in their traditional wall formation. It was an impressive sight with hundreds of crystal ships moving through space like a mobile city. Each ship was larger and more powerful than anything the humans had built. Thexnol was sure this would be an easy victory. The battle began exactly as he expected. The human ships fought bravely, but they were slowly being pushed back. Their smaller ships could not match the firepower of the Zephyrian heavy cruisers. One by one, human vessels began to explode under concentrated alien fire. "This is more like it," Thexnol said as he watched human ships being destroyed. "Soon they will surrender and we can get back to conquering more useful planets." But then something unexpected happened. Captain Alex Brooks's voice came over all human communication channels. "All ships, this is Brooks. Time to show them what Project Fenrir really is. Transmitting unlock codes now." Suddenly, ships that had appeared to be damaged and drifting came back to life. What the aliens had thought were disabled vessels revealed themselves to be heavily armed warships that had been playing dead. Cargo containers that looked innocent burst open to reveal missile batteries inside. Mining ships activated weapon systems that had been disguised as industrial equipment. The real surprise came from Earth itself. The planet's surface erupted with launch signatures as massive railgun platforms built into mountains and hidden under oceans began firing. Streams of metal projectiles traveling at enormous speeds tore through the Zephyrian formation like invisible spears. Lieutenant Commander Sam Wright coordinated the ground-based defenses from a bunker deep under the Rocky Mountains. "Target their command ships first. If we cut off their coordination, the rest will be easier to handle." The Zephyrian fleet suddenly found themselves caught in a crossfire unlike anything they had ever experienced. Human ships attacked from all directions while the planet itself seemed to be shooting at them. Their neat formation began to break apart as ships tried to avoid the deadly rain of projectiles from Earth. "Impossible," shouted Thexnol as his flagship shook from multiple impacts. "How can a planet have weapons that can reach us in orbit?" His tactical officer was frantically trying to make sense of the chaos around them. "Sir, the humans have turned their entire planet into a fortress. They have weapons hidden everywhere. Our sensors are detecting launch sites in every mountain range and under every ocean." The battle turned into a nightmare for the aliens. Every time they thought they had identified all the human ships, more would appear from new hiding places. Asteroids that had looked empty turned out to contain hidden bases. Ships that looked like civilian freighters revealed military-grade weapons. Captain Lisa Parker commanded a squadron of ships that had been disguised as a merchant convoy. When the battle started, they dropped their fake cargo containers and revealed themselves to be fast attack vessels. "All ships follow my lead. We hit their left flank while they are distracted by the planetary bombardment." The human tactics were unlike anything in the Zephyrian military manuals. Instead of fighting in organized formations, the humans spread out and attacked like a pack of wolves hunting a large animal. They bit and withdrew and bit again, never staying in one place long enough for the aliens to target them effectively. Commander Ryan Davis was still flying his fighter through the chaos weaving between the massive alien ships. "These big ships are like flying cities," he told his squadron over the radio. "They are powerful, but they are slow to turn. We can dance around them all day if we stay moving." The battle raged for 4 hours before War Admiral Thexnol finally accepted that he was not going to win. His mighty fleet had been torn apart by these impossible humans. Over 300 of his ships were destroyed or too damaged to fight. The survivors were scattered across the solar system, trying to avoid the continuing bombardment from Earth. "All ships retreat," he ordered, though it hurt his pride to say the words. "Fall back to the jump point and prepare for hyperspace." As the surviving alien ships limped away from Earth, Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of Luna Command watching the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Around him, his exhausted staff was cheering, but Jake knew this was not over. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez said as she looked at her displays, "we are receiving distress calls from 18 human colonies in other star systems. The aliens are attacking them in revenge for our victory." Jake nodded grimly. The aliens were learning that humans did not fight by the usual rules. Now Earth would have to teach them that humans also did not give up when their people were threatened. The war was just beginning, and it was about to spread far beyond Earth's solar system. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you attacked humanity's home. The aliens thought they were fighting a primitive species that would be easy to conquer. Instead, they had awakened something that would hunt them across the stars until justice was served. The Zephyrian Empire had never experienced anything like this before. For the first time in their 12,000-year history, they had been defeated not once, but twice, by the same enemy. High Admiral Zixathera called an emergency meeting of the War Council on their homeworld of Kethval Prime. The great crystal spires of their capital city reached toward the stars, but today they seemed to bend under the weight of shame. In the council chamber, the most powerful military leaders of the Empire gathered to discuss what everyone thought was impossible just weeks ago. These humans are not like any species we have encountered before, Zixathera admitted to her subordinates. They adapt quickly to new situations. They think several steps ahead of us. They fight with a level of determination that borders on insanity. We cannot simply throw more ships at them and expect different results. Admiral Vorthalin, who had commanded fleets for over 1,000 years, spoke up. Perhaps we should consider opening negotiations with them. They have proven they can defend themselves. Maybe we can find a peaceful solution. The chamber fell silent. The idea of the mighty Zephyrian Empire negotiating with a primitive species was almost unthinkable. But the facts were clear. 2 major fleets had been sent to conquer Earth, and both had been destroyed or forced to retreat. Zixathera's crystalline features darkened with anger. The Empire does not negotiate with lesser beings. We will crush these humans, but we will do it properly this time. Recall all fleets from the Outer Rim territories. Strip every border world of its defenses. We will assemble the largest armada in galactic history and end this humiliation once and for all. The orders went out across the Empire. From every corner of Zephyrian space, warships began the long journey home. Dreadnoughts that had been patrolling distant borders, cruiser squadrons that had been keeping rebellious worlds in line, fighter wings that had been hunting pirates in the outer darkness. All of them were called back to join the Great Armada. On Earth, long-range sensors detected the massive fleet beginning to assemble in the Zephyrian home system. The numbers were staggering. 2,000 capital ships, 5,000 support vessels, enough firepower to turn entire planets into molten slag. It was a force that had never been equaled in the recorded history of the galaxy. Jake Morrison called what everyone knew might be the last meeting of Earth's leadership. The mood in the room was somber as the full scope of what they faced became clear. The alien empire was bringing everything they had for one final crushing blow. They are not taking any chances this time, Jake said, as he looked around the table at the faces of Earth's best military minds. Every ship, every weapon, every warrior in their empire is coming for us. If we lose this battle, we lose everything. Admiral Kate Hoffman, who now commanded Earth's combined fleet, stood to address the room. Then we do not lose. It is that simple. We have beaten them twice before. We can beat them again. General Kate Sullivan nodded in agreement. Our ground forces are ready. If any of them make it past the fleet, they will find Earth a very unwelcoming place. We have been preparing defensive positions for months. Jake looked at Colonel Alex Brooks. How are our new projects coming along, Alex? Please tell me you have something that can help us against those numbers. Brooks activated his holographic display showing several new ship designs. We have been busy, Director. Project Ragnarok has given us ships that can ram alien vessels and survive the impact. Project Valkyrie provides us with fighters that can operate for weeks without returning to base. And Project Odin. He paused dramatically. Well, that one is going to be a surprise for everyone. The final battle began at the edge of the solar system near the orbit of Pluto. The Zephyrian Armada emerged from hyperspace in a formation so large it stretched across millions of kilometers of space. It was a sight that would have made any civilized species surrender immediately. A crystalline wall of death that seemed to have no end. Facing this impossible force was every ship that humanity could gather. Military vessels that had been built for war. Converted civilian craft crewed by volunteers. Experimental prototypes that had never been tested in combat. Ships operated by miners and farmers and engineers who had left their families to defend their world. High Admiral Zixathera stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Infinite Glory, and watched the human fleet through her tactical displays. The humans had maybe 1,500 ships against her 7,000. Even accounting for their unusual tactics, the odds were overwhelming in her favor. "So few ships against so many," she said to her officers. "They must know this is hopeless. Perhaps they will finally see reason and surrender." But as the two fleets moved closer together, the humans once again showed why they had survived on their harsh world for millions of years. They did not fight like the civilized species that made up the rest of the galaxy. They fought like the descendants of predators who had spent eons clawing their way to the top of their planetary food chain. The human fleet scattered into thousands of individual units, each following its own tactical plan, while somehow contributing to an overall strategy that the aliens could not understand. They used the asteroid belt as cover, and the gravity wells of planets as weapons. They turned the solar system itself into their ally. Captain Martin Hughes commanded a squadron of converted cargo ships, each one packed with missiles and crewed by volunteers who had never been in a space battle before. "Remember, people, we do not need to win pretty. We just need to win. These aliens think they understand war, but they have never fought anything like us." The human ships moved through space, like angry wasps attacking a much larger enemy. They struck and disappeared and struck again from a different direction. They used every piece of space debris as camouflage and every gravitational field as a slingshot to increase their speed. Commander Rachel Stone piloted her destroyer through the ice rings of Saturn, using the frozen particles as cover, while her crew fired torpedo after torpedo at the passing alien ships. These aliens are trying to maintain perfect formation in a debris field. They really do not understand how to fight a guerrilla war. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the accepted rules of space combat. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, the smaller ships would slip away through gaps that seemed too small for anything to fit through. Every time they concentrated their fire on one group of human ships, another group would attack them from behind. The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships were destroyed in numbers that historians would argue about for centuries. Space filled with debris and radiation, as the largest fleet engagement in galactic history tore itself apart. But slowly, inevitably, the alien formation began to come apart at the seams. High Admiral Zix Thera watched in growing horror as her supposedly invincible armada was torn to pieces by these impossible beings. When a swarm of human fighters broke through her escort screen and began attacking her flagship directly, she finally understood the magnitude of her civilization's mistake. Captain Lewis Carter led the final assault on the Infinite Glory. His fighter squadron danced through the massive ship's defensive fire like leaves in a hurricane. "This is for everyone who said humans could not survive in space," he said, as he lined up his final attack run on the alien command ship. The explosion of the Infinite Glory sent shockwaves through both fleets. The death of their supreme commander broke what remained of Zephyrian resistance. The surviving alien ships fled into hyperspace, carrying news of the most complete defeat in their empire's history. Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of Luna Command, watching the debris field that stretched from Pluto to Jupiter. The space around Earth looked like a starship graveyard, but humanity had survived. Around him, his exhausted staff celebrated the greatest victory in human history. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez said with wonder in her voice, "we are receiving surrender requests from 17 different alien species. Word of our victory is spreading faster than our fastest ships." Jake nodded slowly. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced its arrival among the stars in the most decisive way possible by defeating those who had thought themselves unbeatable. The age of human expansion was about to begin. The destruction of their main fleet sent shockwaves through every corner of the Zephyrian Empire. On worlds that had been conquered centuries ago, the local populations began to whisper about the humans who had done the impossible. In the Great Crystal cities of the core worlds, panic began to spread as refugees from the battle brought news of the defeat. High Admiral Zix Thera was dead, and her flagship was nothing but glowing debris floating in Earth's solar system. The War Council that remained had to choose a new leader and plan their response to this unprecedented disaster. They selected Admiral Korthvex, who was known for his cold, calculating mind and his complete ruthlessness in dealing with enemies. "The humans have cost us everything," Korthvex announced to the assembled military leaders. "Our finest ships, our best commanders, thousands of years of military tradition, all destroyed by primitives who should have been slaves by now. But they have made one critical mistake. They have shown us their full strength, and now we know how to counter it. On Earth, the celebration of humanity's greatest victory was tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. Jake Morrison stood in his office looking out at the Earth through the transparent aluminum windows. The planet looked peaceful, but he knew that somewhere out in the galaxy, the aliens were planning their revenge. "We cannot wait for them to come back," he said to the assembled fleet commanders in the briefing room. "They have seen our best tricks 3 times now. Next time they will be ready for everything we showed them. We need to hit them where they do not expect it." Captain Steve Bennett, who had commanded mining ships in the asteroid belt during the Great Battle, raised his hand. "What are you proposing, Director? We barely have enough ships left to defend Earth, let alone go on the offensive." Jake activated a holographic star chart showing the surrounding systems. "Intelligence suggests their main supply depot is located here in the Kepler 442 system. If we can destroy their logistics network, we can cripple their ability to wage war, against us or anyone else." Admiral Kate Hoffman studied the projection with the eye of a veteran fleet commander. "That is deep in enemy territory, Jake. We would be outnumbered and outgunned with no chance of reinforcement. Any ships we send on that mission would be on their own, which is exactly why they will not expect it," Jake replied. "Commander Torres, how many ships can we spare for a long-range operation?" Commander Elena Torres consulted her datapad. 50 ships maximum, all volunteers. It would be a one-way mission unless we can capture enemy vessels for the return trip. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed what Jake was proposing. A strike deep into the heart of enemy territory with no backup and no guarantee of survival. It was the kind of desperate plan that could either end the war or lead to the complete destruction of the strike force. "I will lead the mission myself," Steve Bennett said quietly. "My crews know how to operate far from home for extended periods. We are used to living on what we can salvage and improvise." 3 weeks later, 50 of Earth's finest ships departed on the longest military mission in human history. The strike force was composed entirely of volunteers who knew they might never see home again. They traveled through uncharted space, avoiding all known trade routes and alien patrol patterns. The journey took 3 months of careful navigation through hostile territory. The ships had to maintain radio silence and avoid any contact with alien vessels. They refueled at abandoned asteroids and hid in the shadow of dead planets. It was a testament to human determination that all 50 ships made it to their destination. When they finally reached the Kepler 442 system, they found exactly what intelligence had promised. A massive supply depot protected by only a small guard force. The Zephyrians had grown overconfident after centuries of easy victories. They never imagined that anyone would dare strike so far from their home territory. The depot was enormous. Fuel tanks that could supply entire fleets. Ammunition stockpiles that contained enough weapons to conquer a dozen star systems. Food and medical supplies for millions of soldiers. It was the beating heart that kept the Zephyrian war machine functioning. Steve Bennett studied the target through his ship's sensors and felt a cold satisfaction. "This is it, people. This is how we end their ability to make war. Primary objective is the fuel reserves. Secondary targets are the ammunition stockpiles. We have maybe 1 hour before reinforcements arrive." The attack began at dawn according to the local star's light cycle. The human ships emerged from hyperspace like avenging angels with their weapons already charged and targeting solutions locked in. The depot's defenders were caught completely off guard. Lieutenant Jack Reynolds commanded one of the assault frigates. His ship wove through the massive storage arrays while his crew worked frantically to plant demolition charges. Charges set on Fuel Depot 7, moving to Ammunition Storage Complex 12. The space around the depot became a maze of explosions as the humans systematically destroyed everything of military value. Fuel tanks erupted in brilliant fireballs that could be seen from orbit. Ammunition dumps went off in chain reactions that shook the entire facility. Captain Lisa Parker led a squadron of fighters in attacks on the depot's communications center. "Take out their transmitters first. If they cannot call for help, we have more time to complete the mission." The Zephyrian guards fought back desperately, but they had never faced an enemy like this before. The humans moved with surgical precision, destroying only what they needed to while avoiding unnecessary casualties. This was not about revenge or conquest. This was about ending a war. Within 57 minutes, the humans had destroyed enough supplies to cripple Zephyrian military operations for months. Entire fleets would be grounded without fuel. Armies would run out of ammunition. The great war machine that had conquered 47 star systems would grind to a halt. As the human ships prepared to escape, Zephyrian reinforcements finally arrived. 3 heavy cruisers dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began pursuing the raiders. But the humans had planned for this possibility. "All ships, this is Bennett," Steve announced over the tactical frequency. "Execute Escape Protocol 7. Remember what we practiced in the simulator." The human ships scattered in all directions like startled birds. Some headed for the outer planets of the system, while others dove toward the star itself. The Zephyrian ships could not pursue all of them and had to choose which groups to follow. Most of the human ships escaped, but 7 were caught by the alien pursuers. Rather than surrender, their crews activated self-destruct charges. The last thing the Zephyrian captains heard was a human voice saying, "Earth remembers, Earth will always remember." The surviving 43 ships made the long journey home through different routes to avoid detection. When they finally reached Earth 3 months later, they brought news that changed everything. The strike had been completely successful. Intelligence. Reports from across the galaxy confirmed that Zephyrian military operations had ground to a halt. Jake Morrison met personally with Steve Bennett when his ship docked at Luna Command. The mining captain looked older and more tired, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. "We did it, Director," Steve reported. "The depot is gone. Everything they had stored there for their expansion into this sector has been destroyed. It will take them years to rebuild their supply network." Jake shook the man's hand. "You and your crews have given us something more valuable than ships or weapons, Steve. You have given us time. Time to build more defenses, time to find allies, time to prepare for whatever comes next." But even as Earth celebrated this victory, Jake knew the war was entering a new phase. The aliens would be more careful now, more desperate. They would strike back in ways that humanity might not expect. The hunt had begun, and both sides would pursue each other across the galaxy until one of them could fight no more. The message had been sent to every corner of the galaxy. Earth would not simply defend itself behind planetary shields and orbital fortresses. Earth would reach out across the stars to strike at its enemies wherever they might hide. The age of human expansion had begun with the sound of explosions echoing through alien space. The destruction of their primary supply depot forced the Zephyrian Empire to face a reality they had never encountered before. For the first time in their 12,000-year history, they were losing a war. Admiral Korthvex stood in the ruins of what had once been the Empire's greatest military command center, trying to salvage something from the disaster. "How could 50 primitive ships penetrate so deeply into our territory?" he demanded of his intelligence officers. "How could they destroy our most important supply depot without anyone detecting them until it was too late?" The intelligence chief, an ancient Zephyrian named Veltharax, consulted his data crystals with shaking appendages. "Sir, the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not follow established patterns of warfare. They strike where we are weakest and disappear before we can respond." Korthvex's crystalline features darkened with rage. "Then we will make them fight our way. Recall every ship from every corner of the Empire. Strip the defenses from every world we control. We will assemble such a force that these humans will have no choice but to meet us in open battle." Across the Empire, the recall orders went out. From distant frontier worlds to heavily defended core systems, every available warship began the journey to the assembly point. It was the largest mobilization in galactic history. Ships that had not moved in centuries were activated and crewed. Ancient weapons that had been in storage were brought back into service. On Earth, long-range sensors detected the massive fleet beginning to form up in Zephyrian space. The numbers were beyond anything humanity had faced before. Over 4,000 capital ships supported by twice that many smaller vessels. It was a force capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Jake Morrison called what everyone knew would be the final strategy meeting in the Luna Command Center. The faces around the table showed the strain of months of continuous warfare but also a grim determination that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. "They are bringing everything they have," Jake announced to the assembled leaders. "Every ship, every weapon, every warrior in their empire. This is their final attempt to crush us completely." Admiral Kate Hoffman stood slowly. The months of combat had aged her, but her voice was still strong. "Then we make sure it is their final mistake. We have beaten them before. We will beat them again." General Kate Sullivan nodded in agreement. "Our ground defenses are ready. If any of them make it past the fleet, they will face the most heavily fortified planet in galactic history." Colonel Alex Brooks activated his final presentation, showing Earth's last desperate preparations. "We have converted every orbital station into a weapons platform. Every asteroid in the belt has been fitted with engines and warheads. We have turned the entire solar system into one giant fortress." The final confrontation began at the edge of the solar system, where Pluto's cold orbit marked the boundary between human space and the greater galaxy. The Zephyrian armada emerged from hyperspace in a formation so vast it seemed to blot out the stars themselves. Thousands of crystalline ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns, stretching across millions of kilometers. Facing this overwhelming force was everything humanity could muster. Every ship that could fly, every weapon that could fire, every person willing to die for their homeworld. Military vessels flew alongside converted freighters. Veterans fought beside teenagers who had never seen combat. It was not the largest fleet in galactic history, but it was the most determined. Admiral Korthvek stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Eternal Vengeance, and surveyed the human formation through his tactical displays. The humans had, perhaps, 2,000 ships against his 6,000. Even accounting for their unconventional tactics, he held an overwhelming advantage. "Today we end this embarrassment," he announced to his fleet commanders. "Today the Empire reclaims its rightful position as the dominant power in this galaxy. No mercy will be shown. No prisoners will be taken. These humans will learn the price of defying their betters." The human fleet moved to meet them and once again demonstrated why they had survived on their harsh world for millions of years. They did not fight like the civilized species that populated the rest of the galaxy. They fought like the descendants of apex predators who had earned their place through countless generations of struggle. Captain Martin Hughes commanded the converted cargo haulers that formed the backbone of humanity's improvised fleet. "Remember, everyone, we are not trying to be heroes today. We are trying to survive and make sure our children have a future. Fight smart, fight dirty, and never give up." The battle that followed would be remembered as the largest space engagement in galactic history. Ships died in numbers that would shock historians for millennia to come. The void between worlds became a graveyard of twisted metal and crystalline debris as two civilizations fought for the right to exist. Commander Rachel Stone piloted her destroyer through the chaos, using every trick she had learned in months of combat. "These aliens still think this is a gentleman's war," she told her crew as they launched another spread of torpedoes. "They have no idea what desperate humans are capable of." The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to die cleanly. Every time they destroyed a human ship, two more seemed to take its place. Damaged vessels that should have been helpless continued fighting until their reactors overloaded. Crews that should have surrendered instead rammed their ships into alien targets. As the battle raged, Colonel Brooks activated humanity's final desperate gambit. "All stations, this is Brooks. Execute Protocol Omega. Repeat, execute Protocol Omega." Across the solar system, hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as asteroids suddenly came to life. The belt itself seemed to attack the alien fleet, as rocks the size of buildings accelerated to incredible speeds and slammed into Zephyrian ships. It was a revelation of human engineering that no one had seen coming. Admiral Korthvex watched his carefully planned formation dissolve into chaos, as his ships found themselves under attack from every direction, including from objects they had dismissed as harmless debris. "Impossible," he whispered as another of his dreadnoughts exploded under the impact of a weaponized asteroid. The tide of battle turned when Captain Lewis Carter led a desperate assault on the Eternal Vengeance itself. His fighter squadron had been reduced to just 12 ships, but they dove through the alien fleet's defenses like arrows seeking their target. "This is for Earth," Lewis said as he lined up his final attack run. "This is for everyone who said we could not win." The explosion of the alien flagship sent shockwaves through both fleets, but it was the psychological impact that mattered most. The death of Admiral Korthvex broke the will of the Zephyrian forces. Ships that had fought with mechanical precision suddenly began making mistakes. Formations that had held firm for hours started to collapse. The surviving alien vessels fled into hyperspace, carrying news of the most complete defeat in their empire's long history. The once mighty Zephyrian Empire that had conquered 47 star systems had been broken by a species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians. Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of Luna Command, watching the debris field that stretched from Mercury to Neptune. The solar system looked like a cosmic battlefield, but humanity had survived. More than survived, they had won a victory that would echo across the galaxy for generations. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez reported with amazement in her voice, "we are receiving communications from over 100 different species. Former Zephyrian subject worlds are declaring independence. Dozens of governments want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. The entire political structure of this sector is collapsing." Jake nodded slowly as he contemplated the magnitude of what they had achieved. Humanity had not just won a war. They had shattered an empire and opened the galaxy to new possibilities. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over, and the age of human expansion was about to begin. In the months that followed, human ships began exploring beyond their solar system to find a galaxy transformed. The Zephyrian Empire crumbled as world after world declared independence. Species that had been enslaved for centuries looked to Earth as their liberator. Trade routes that had been closed for millennia opened to human merchants and explorers. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about underestimating those who had fought for everything they possessed. Earth had announced its arrival among the stars not with words or diplomacy, but with the thunder of weapons and the courage of those willing to die for their beliefs. Never again would any species make the mistake of thinking that humans were primitive or weak. The stubborn, adaptable, and utterly unpredictable children of Earth had claimed their place among the stars, and no force in the galaxy would ever be able to take it away from them.